Welcome to the AI for Career Success podcast by Curt Robbins. We're experts at AI coaching and helping professionals like you and your employees upskill in AI. I'm your host, Fred Jones.
And I'm your co-host, Daphne Blake. Welcome to episode 198.
It's great to be here. You know, everyone right now is adopting artificial intelligence at just a dizzying pace. Like you see it in every single sector.
Oh, absolutely. Every department is trying to figure it out.
Right. But there is a massive difference between simply adopting a tool and actually becoming fluent in it. So the big question we're tackling today is, are you actually developing the skills to use AI well?
Or are you just, pressing buttons in the dark and hoping for the best? Because that is the exact challenge so many professionals face right now.
Yeah, I mean, we know people are logging into these platforms a lot more frequently, but measuring how effectively they use them, their actual functional fluency, is incredibly complex.
It really is, which is exactly why today's exploration is so critical. We managed to get our hands on the February 2026 Anthropic Education Report, the AI Fluency Index.
And our mission for this analysis is to really unpack Anthropic's research. They looked at nearly 10,000 real-world conversations to reveal the exact behaviors that separate casual users from the true power users.
Right, because once you know what those observable behaviors are, you can actually start building them into your own workflows and teaching them to your teams,
Exactly. And what's truly fascinating about this report is that the researchers weren't just guessing. They didn't just send out some survey asking people to rate their own skills.
No, they built a rigorous taxonomy of behaviors to track human-AI collaboration across this massive sample of anonymized chats. It's like a literal look under the hood of how the smartest professionals are interacting with these language models.
So let's unpack the methodology first, because the way they measured this fluency is actually really clever. How did they quantify something that abstract?
Well, they grounded the research in something called the 4D AI Fluency Framework. It's a model developed by Professors Rick DeCan and Joseph Feller, working with Anthropic.
Okay, and what does that framework actually look like?
It outlines 24 specific, definable behaviors that basically exemplify highly effective human-AI collaboration.
Wow, 24 behaviors is a lot. But they couldn't possibly track all of those just by analyzing a chat interface, right?
You hit the nail on the head. Out of those 24, only 11 are directly observable when someone is actively typing back and forth with the AI. And for this study, that was taking place on Claude.ai and Claude Code.
Okay, so what about the other 13 behaviors? Where do those happen?
They happen entirely outside the chat window. Things like cross-referencing the AI's output with internal proprietary company data.
Right, stuff you wouldn't just upload to a prompt.
Exactly. Or running an AI-generated script through a local compiler on your own machine. Or even just navigating the business strategy, like deciding how to present an AI report to a board of directors.
That makes total sense. Those are arguably some of the most critical dimensions of professional AI fluency, but they're basically invisible to the platform itself.
Yeah, totally invisible. So for this specific study, Anthropic focused purely on those 11 observable behaviors. And the scale is seriously impressive. We're talking about 9,830 conversations.
And they specifically filtered for conversations that had several back and forths, right? Over a 7-day window in January of 2026.
Yep, they wanted to see actual dialogues, not just single prompt queries.
I want to pause right here just to assure you, the listener, who might be worrying about corporate data privacy. Anthropic used a highly secure, privacy-preserving analysis tool.
Right. Human researchers were not reading people's private code.
Exactly. They use AI models to classify the behaviors. They use Claude Sonnet 4 to detect the fluency behaviors, and Claude Haiku 3.5 to detect the language. No personally identifiable information was included at all.
Which is a crucial point for professionals to understand about enterprise data. But looking at the bigger picture, they were trying to establish a baseline. Before we can coach your employees on fluency, we need to know what collaboration looks like in the wild today.
Right. And they checked if the results held up across 6 different languages, right? English, French, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, and German. Did the patterns actually hold up?
They did. Remarkably consistent across all 6. They did notice a slight dip in high-level behaviors on Saturday compared to the weekday peak, though.
Oh, sure. That makes sense.
Yeah, it strongly suggests a difference between casual weekend tinkering and intensive work use. But the habits of power users remained totally stable.
Okay, so they have this mountain of data. They're looking for these 11 behaviors. What was the biggest predictor of success? Like, what separates the novice from the power user?
It basically boils down to two words: iteration and refinement.
Iteration and refinement. Let's dig into
The
that.
massive 85.7% of the conversations in their sample exhibited this. The best users weren't just taking the first answer and running with it, they were actively building on previous exchanges as a continuous loop.
It's the difference between treating the AI as a vending machine versus treating it like a collaborative sous chef.
Yes, I really love that analogy. How does that play out in a daily business context, though?
Well, think about novices. They treat it exactly like a vending machine. You press a button, type a transactional prompt like write me an email, get your snack, and walk away.
It's entirely one-directional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you have a highly skilled sous chef in the kitchen, you don't just hand them a vague recipe and leave the building.
Right. That would be a total disaster.
You stay in the kitchen. You taste the sauce. You adjust the seasoning together. You might say, actually, let's chop those onions a little finer. You guide their raw skills with your domain knowledge.
And that is exactly what the Anthropic data shows us. The users who stay in the kitchen, the ones who actively iterate, demonstrate a much higher level of fluency.
And here is the major insight for you, the listener, and why this matters for your career. Conversations with iteration exhibit roughly double the number of other fluency behaviors compared to non-iterative chats.
Wait, double, just by staying in the conversation.
Yes. On average, conversations involving iteration show 2.67 additional fluency behaviors compared to just 1.33 for the non-iterative ones.
That is a massive jump in proficiency. What specific behaviors are increasing there?
It's especially pronounced in how users evaluate the outputs. Users who iterate are 5.6 times more likely to question the AI's reasoning.
Let that sink in. 5.6 times more likely. Plus, they're 4 times more likely to actively identify missing context.
So the simple act of pushing back actually forces you to turn your brain on. You stop passively accepting text and start acting like a leader.
Precisely. It builds healthy critical thinking muscles. You naturally put yourself in the role of an editor or a senior manager. You look for the gaps and say, okay, this strategy is good, but what about this edge case?
It's treating the AI as a genuine thought partner. The report calls it an augmentative approach, rather than just delegating work entirely.
And that augmentative approach is the most effective expression of AI fluency they found.
But here's where the data gets really interesting. Because while iteration builds critical thinking, the report highlights a very dangerous scenario where all of this just goes out the window.
Right, a scenario where even seasoned users drop their guard and stop evaluating the work.
Let's take a brief break for a special message from our producer, Curt Robbins.
Hi, this is Curt Robbins. First, thanks for listening. I truly appreciate your support. I want to let you know that I'm currently accepting new clients. My rates are affordable, and I have more than 25 years of experience working for enterprise companies like Microsoft, Northrop Grumman, Oracle, PNC Bank, FedEx, USAA, and Wells Fargo, among many others. If you want to improve your IT documentation and communications, hire me. I deliver fast, know how to use AI to improve efficiency and accuracy, and love going the extra mile to satisfy my clients. Thank you for subscribing and listening. Back to you, Daphne and Fred.
Welcome back to the AI for Career Success podcast, where we help you get smarter than your competition by coaching you in AI. So before the break, we were talking about a scenario where users suddenly drop their guard. What triggers that shift?
The researchers discovered this fascinating shift when users are creating what they call artifacts.
Artifacts. What falls into that category for this study?
In the context of Claude, artifacts are highly polished, self-contained outputs. So fully generated code blocks, meticulously formatted documents, complex spreadsheets, UI designs, anything that looks like a finished professional product.
Okay, and about 12.3% of the conversations involve creating those, right?
Exactly.
But I have to push back a little on the data here because it feels like a paradox. The data says we spend way more time giving explicit instructions when creating artifacts, but we spend significantly less time checking if the AI did a good job. How does that work?
It is quite the paradox. You're absolutely right about the upfront effort. Behaviors around description and delegation absolutely skyrocket.
People get really demanding.
Very demanding. They clarify goals 14.7 percentage points more often. They specify strict formats 14.5 points more often.
So they act like the strictest project managers on the planet, typing things like, I want this report exactly like this in Markdown using these 3 examples.
Exactly. They front-load the work. But here is the trap that intense directiveness at the start does not translate to greater discernment at the end. It's the exact opposite.
Wow.
When they interact with these polished artifacts, users are significantly less likely to identify missing context that drops by 5.2 points. Fact-checking drops by 3.7 points. And questioning the model's reasoning drops by 3.1 points.
So they just accept it. They hand over a list of demands, the AI gives back a perfectly formatted document, and the user just says, "Great, thanks," without checking the math. Why do our brains short-circuit like that?
It raises an incredibly important question about psychology, and Anthropic offers a few explanations. The first is what we call the halo effect of a polished user interface.
The halo effect, meaning because it looks pretty, our brains assume it's factually correct.
Basically, yes. If the code has perfect syntax highlighting or the report has flawless formatting and bullet points, it looks finished. We see the aesthetic polish and unconsciously assume structural accuracy.
It's like someone showing up to a high-stakes job interview in a perfectly tailored suit. You automatically assume they know what they're talking about before they even open their mouth.
That's a perfect analogy. The formatting acts like a tailored suit. It just bypasses our critical filters. But there are a couple of other explanations to acknowledge when coaching teams.
Right, like what?
While some tasks involving artifacts might just be more about aesthetics than strict facts.
Give me an example of that in a workflow.
Like asking the AI to design a layout for an internal dashboard or generate a CSS color palette. You aren't fact-checking it, you're just looking to see if it's visually pleasing.
That makes sense. It's a completely different evaluation metric.
Exactly. And the third possible explanation goes back to those unobservable behaviors. It's highly likely that users are evaluating these artifacts, but through channels Anthropic can't track.
Oh, like taking the code completely off the platform to test it in their own compiler.
Right. A developer isn't going to debate logic in the chat window. They'll paste the code into their environment and run it. If it throws an error, they know it's wrong. All that critical evaluation is happening, but it's invisible to the study.
That's the implicit behaviors limitation. You might be fact-checking against your internal CRM mentally, but if you don't type it back into the chat, the model can't count it.
That's right. But whatever the primary explanation is, the halo effect, the aesthetics, or off-platform, testing this pattern of dropping our guard is a massive red flag that every professional needs to pay attention to.
Why is it such an urgent red flag for the listener?
Because these AI models are only going to get better and more persuasive at generating flawless-looking outputs. And as they look more perfect, our human inclination to blindly trust them will only grow.
So the ability to critically evaluate polished work is going to be incredibly valuable.
It will be your single most valuable professional asset in the next 5 years. You have to force yourself to look past the tailored suit and relentlessly interrogate the substance.
That is a profound takeaway for anyone managing a team today. Fortunately, the report actually provides a highly practical blueprint for developing this AI fluency. Let's walk through the 3 specific strategies they outline for actionable upskilling.
Let's do it. These are immediately applicable.
Strategy number 1, stay in the conversation. This goes right back to the magic of iteration. Train your employees to never accept the first response as final.
Treat it purely as a rough draft. Point out things that don't align with your company's tone and force the AI to refine its work. It forces you to stay engaged.
Which leads directly into strategy 2, question polished outputs. This is the direct antidote to the artifact trap.
You have to train yourself to recognize that feeling of satisfaction when you see a perfectly formatted table. Use that exact feeling as a trigger to pause.
A trigger to pause. I love that framing.
It's essential. When the output looks perfect, stop and ask, is this actually accurate? Is there business context missing? Do not let the aesthetic polish lower your guard.
And strategy number 3, set the terms of the collaboration. This stat blew my mind a little bit. In only 30% of the observed conversations, do users actually tell the AI how they'd like it to interact with them.
Only 30%. That means 70% of the time professionals are just letting the machine dictate the dynamic of the collaboration.
Exactly. And it's such an easy fix. Add explicit behavioral instructions to your prompts. Type things like, put it back if my assumptions are wrong, or walk me through your reasoning step by step.
By establishing expectations up front, you fundamentally change the power dynamic. You're actively managing a cognitive resource.
It's the difference between asking a junior employee to just handle a report versus saying, draft this, show me your thought process, and let me know the weak spots before we finalize.
It's Management 101 applied to AI. But as we advise leaders to apply these strategies, we absolutely must ground ourselves in the caveats of this study.
Right. We don't want to misinterpret the findings. What should the listener be cautious about?
First, this data is a snapshot. 1 week in January 2026. and the users likely skew heavily towards early adopters and tech-adjacent professionals.
So it isn't necessarily a universal benchmark for how the general public uses AI.
Exactly. Plus, the data is entirely focused on the Claude platform. And importantly, the findings are purely correlational.
Meaning, we don't know if iterating actually causes an employee to become a better critical thinker.
Or if inherently critical employees just naturally iterate more, or maybe complex tasks just require both. The researchers want to rigorously explore these causal questions in the future.
They also mentioned wanting to do longitudinal analyses, comparing new corporate users to highly experienced ones over years.
It's clear that AI fluency isn't a static trait, it's a continuously developing professional skill set.
So what does this mean for you and your teams? We've talked about the vending machine versus the sous chef, the dangerous trap of the beautifully formatted artifact, and the fact that 7% of people don't even set ground rules.
It means the skills that will set your employees apart aren't just technical prompt tricks. The skills that matter are fundamentally critical.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder as we wrap up. As AI models evolve, they're going to get incredibly good at generating work that is utterly flawless on the surface. Code that compiles perfectly, analyses that look authoritative.
If the machine handles all the formatting and basic synthesis seamlessly, what happens to us?
Will our human evaluation muscles atrophy entirely because everything looks so good? Or will we be forced to invent entirely new, rigorous ways to test machine logic? Because the professionals who win in the next decade won't just be the best prompters.
They will be the best skeptics.
Thank you for listening to the AI for Career Success podcast from Curt Robbins, where we help you get smarter than your competition. Please buy us a coffee and remember that we're experts at coaching you and your employees about AI. We'll see you next time.